Good morning, Big Ten fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Big Ten Morning Minutes. I'm your host, Michael Chen. Give me a follow on Twitter at MFC2123. It is the 1st of February, 2019, and you all know what it means to get into February. It means that the signing day is coming now. Granted, with the early signing day, things have slowed down significantly. However, it is still National Signing Day. There are still things going on. There's still plenty of prospects still out there that schools are doing to get them in tow for this coming season. And unfortunately for a lot of Big Ten teams, it was pretty quiet yesterday, but I think this is more the calm before the storm, as you would say. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens this weekend. Lots of junior days, lots of recruiting visits that are going to happen, lots of in-homes, etc. I'll keep you posted on all of that as well. But typically I don't give you a lot of stuff that's going on about just going on visits. But because it's National Signing Day weekend, I'll fill you in a little bit more over the weekend on what happens visit-wise, giving you a little bit of primer leading up to National Signing Day on Wednesday. Let's start off with Maryland. They have gotten a JUCO offensive lineman to get a visit there. Offensive lineman Paris Heath. He will be visiting College Park this weekend, and he's going to give Mike Locksley a shot to change his mind, as though he is committed to Louisiana Tech currently. Typically when recruits go on visits who are unsigned, I consider them non-committed recruits until they actually sign, especially with the early signing period now and the late period. Because previously, if you were committed, it was a little bit more, binding. But now that players can sign in the early period, it's changed everything. So therefore, yeah, Heath is committed to Louisiana Tech at the current moment. However, to me, it's more of an open commitment. That's hey, I like this school, but I'm still going to keep my options open, which to me, that's not really a commitment. So Heath will be on campus, and Mike Locksley will get an opportunity to, quote-unquote, flip the young man from Louisiana Tech. So I'll keep you posted on what happens with that visit. Rutgers was the lone school this past evening, yesterday, to get a commitment, as they added some defensive line depth with defensive tackle Ryan Buell committing to Chris Ash and the Scarlet Knights. Young man's a late bloomer, good size at 6'2", 280 pounds. Not really ranked along the national rankings, but they're calling him a sleeper. He went to a very small school. And so a lot of times those guys, if you don't go to camps, if you're not playing in big-time programs, you don't quite get the looks. But we've seen plenty of guys show up later on in their career as they mature, because you're an 18, 17, 16-year-old body. You have no idea how they project, really. I mean, you can obviously have a good idea of what they would look like projecting out 3, 4 years, 5 years down the road. But, the recruiting process is an exact science. You see guys look at Khalil Mack. He's a prime example of a guy who obviously wasn't highly recruited, ended up going to Buffalo, and now he is arguably the best defensive lineman in the game. So it's not an exact science, so Rutgers potentially has a good one in Buell there as well. Because of the slow day yesterday, I'm going to give you a little bit of NFL news. Former Penn State running back Saquon Barkley yesterday won the Pepsi Rookie of the Year. And before I move on to the little note that I've got on the hardwood, I'm going to go over the current recruiting rankings with you inside the conference and nationally as well. You've got Michigan coming in with 27 commitments nationally at 6, obviously first in the conference. You got Penn State at 10th with 20 commits. Second in the conference, you have the Buckeyes, 13th nationally overall with 16, which is a little short, so you expect them to add a few players here. You got Nebraska at 19 with 26 commitments nationally. Purdue kicking it into the top 25 at 24 with 26 commitments. Just outside the top 25, you got a couple Big Ten schools in Wisconsin at 26 with 19 commitments, 28 Michigan State with 19 commitments. Just to give you a primer as well on this, these are all the composite rankings, and that's done through 24/7 Sports. I think they do the best job with the composite rankings, taking everyone's into account and then just putting them into one big ranking system. A little further down, you're looking at Minnesota and then Iowa at 39 and 40. Minnesota checking in with 22 commitments, and Iowa has 20. And then just a few slots below them, you have the Hoosiers checking in at 42nd overall in the nation at 19 commits. And then we got to work a little bit further down. Yeah, you're going to find Northwestern. They moved up just a little bit with the commitment they got the other day, checking in at 48th. And unfortunately for the Big Ten, you're looking at a couple schools that are in the the late 50s, early 60s, in Illinois at 57 with just 13 commits. So you expect Lovie Smith to add a few of those here in the late signing period. And then Chris Ash and Rutgers, obviously I just talked about them getting Ryan Buell, so that upped their commitments from 17 to 18, but they're checking in at 61st in the country, and that's going to round out the Big Ten there. So it's good to see. I got one more school in Maryland. That's right. Maryland's had a rough go. Mike Locksley has had a rough go at things. Hasn't gone quite as smooth as he would have liked with the transition from Alabama as their offensive coordinator to the head man at Maryland. They've only got 12 commitments right now, so look for them to add some bodies as well. It's unfortunate that you're seeing some Big Ten schools so low. When you look at the top-tier conferences, particularly the SEC and the ACC, as those two schools have faced off, conferences. I mean, really just those two schools in Alabama and Clemson have really played for national titles recently. But when you look at it, I mean, you're looking at schools that are competitive, and the SEC, I mean, pretty much all of their schools are in the top 45. So, I mean, you're looking at, Kentucky is just checking in at 34, and Kentucky had a good year, but nothing spectacular. But still, that shows you the depth of the conference and the recruiting that you need to do to win. And recruiting is the lifeblood of the majority of programs, so you have to be able to recruit. And to see a lot of Big Ten teams, especially to me, the surprising ones to me, I love what Purdue's done. I really think that Jeff Brom has the Boilermakers going in the right direction, although the season didn't quite end the way that they wanted to. They got a key win against Ohio State in conference, and that was enough momentum to build off of that win for them. And I think they've got things going in the right direction. You love to see Wisconsin pretty much in the top 25, although 26 just kind of outside of it. You like seeing that. Michigan State's right there as well, because those two teams, they're typically in the 40s and 50s. They don't get the highest ranked recruits, but to see them up in those areas, that's pretty good for them. So I like what the Big Ten has done. Obviously, the lower tier teams, they have got some work to do in the Marylands, the Rutgers, and Illinois. But I think that they're going a little different route, as they're going with a little bit more transfers and JUCOs, which ultimately, if you want to win a little bit quicker, that's the way to go, and we'll see how that pans out for the schools. And then one note on the basketball side, Tim Miles for Nebraska got the kiss of death from athletic director Bill Moose, stating that he supports Miles and the program despite a 13-8 and 3-7 conference record. So watch out to see what happens with Miles at the end of the season. Moose did mention that he was going to reevaluate everything towards the end of the year, so we'll keep an eye out on that as well. And that's going to do it for me this morning for your Big Ten Morning Minutes. I know it ran a little bit long, but I wanted to give you an idea of where all the Big Ten schools were recruiting-wise going into the final recruiting weekend of 2019. So that's been your Big Ten Morning Minutes for February 1st, 2019. I've been your host, Michael Chen. Give me a follow on Twitter at MFC2123. It is not as cold as it has been the last few days, so people are getting outside. But enjoy the Friday, the 1st of February. Enjoy the weekend. Have a great one, Big Ten fans.